The Falklands Campaign of 1982 witnessed the largest deployment of British Special Forces since World War II. The Special Air Service, the Special Boat Squadron, and the Royal Marines Mountain and Arctic Warfare Cadre conducted spectacular raids during the war. One of the most successful attacks was made by D Squadron SAS against an Argentine airfield on Pebble Island. "11 Argentinian aircraft, posing a serious threat to the British amphibious landings on the Falkland Islands, were destroyed. The raid exemplified the SAS motto, "Who dares, wins." Situated deep in the South Atlantic, the Falkland Islands have been the source of dispute between Britain and Argentina ever since the British first settled there in 1833. Known as Las Malvinas by the Argentinians, the barren, windswept islands are just 300 miles from mainland Argentina, 8,000 miles from Britain. At the beginning of the 1980s, the population of 1,800 was staunchly British and fiercely opposed to any links with Argentina. In 1982, the military junta that had ruled Argentina for 7 years was growing increasingly unpopular. In a dirty war against left-wing groups, more than 3,000 Argentine citizens had disappeared without trace. The economy was in ruins, and inflation had rocketed to more than 600%. Mass union demonstrations filled the streets with violence and tear gas. The military dictatorship was desperate for a foreign diversion. They found one on March 19, 1982, when Argentine scrap dealers began to dismantle old buildings on the British colony of South Georgia, 900 miles southeast of the Falkland Islands. Accompanying them were Argentine soldiers who illegally raised the Argentine flag over British territory. The British demanded that the flag be lowered and troops withdrawn. When ignored, the Royal Navy survey ship HMS Endurance was sent to South Georgia to remove the Argentine military presence. Argentina's rulers took this as an act of war. On April 2nd, over 700 Argentinian Marines landed on the Falkland Islands. The small garrison of 67 British Royal Marines protecting the islands was overwhelmed. British soldiers were captured by the Argentine Special Forces Unit Buzo Táctico and forced to surrender. The next day, Argentinian forces seized the island of South Georgia against fierce resistance from the garrison of only 22 Royal Marines stationed there. The Argentine people were ecstatic as the military occupied the Falklands. In a remarkable turnaround, the despised military junta was now popular. In London, the government of Margaret Thatcher reacted swiftly.
British sovereign territory has been invaded by a foreign power. The government has now decided that a large task force will sail as soon as all preparations are complete.
In the space of one weekend, 100 British ships and thousands of troops were ready for war. On Monday, April 5th, the task force set sail on its 8,000-mile voyage to the Falkland Islands. With it, the headquarters of the 22nd Special Air Service Regiment, Britain's elite Special Forces unit under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Michael Rose. Only 2 months earlier, the SAS had started contingency planning for operations in the Falklands. But no scenario had envisioned the deployment of SAS forces to the islands. Now the troops honed their skills as the task force headed south. At first, a holiday atmosphere prevailed, as few believed that a war was inevitable. But diplomatic talks at the United Nations were getting nowhere. On April 5th, D Squadron of the SAS flew ahead to the U.S. base on Ascension Island near the equator. From there, they embarked on the supply ship Fort Austin as part of an advance force to South Georgia. With them were members of Britain's most secretive Special Forces unit, the Special Boat Squadron. The SBS was primarily responsible for beach reconnaissance prior to an amphibious landing. Meanwhile, Royal Navy nuclear attack submarines were already patrolling the South Atlantic. And on April 7th, Britain declared a 200-mile total exclusion zone around the Falkland Islands. Any aircraft or ship that entered the zone was liable to be destroyed. 2 weeks later, the advance force reached South Georgia. Mountain Troop of D Squadron SAS embarked on helicopters for an assault. Under the command of Captain Gavin Hamilton, they landed on the inhospitable Fortuna Glacier, some distance from the Argentine garrisons at Grytviken and Leith. Then the weather conditions turned, and blizzards made progress impossible. Hamilton requested evacuation, but 2 helicopters crashed on the glacier in the whiteout conditions. Eventually, the men of Mountain Troop were extracted during the fierce blizzard by a Wessex helicopter, nicknamed Humphrey, skillfully flown by Lieutenant Commander Ian Stanley. 19 men crammed into the helicopter, designed to carry just 5. For his brilliant flying, Stanley was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. Undeterred, the commander of the SAS detachment, Major Cedric Delvis, decided to put his boat troop ashore in their 5 Gemini inflatable craft. But the Gemini's outboard engines could not cope with the rough seas. 2 Gemini was swept away by high winds. 1 crew managed to make its way ashore and went into hiding. The other was saved by Chopper Humphrey, piloted by Ian Stanley. Meanwhile, No. 2 Section Special Boat Squadron was inserted onto South Georgia by helicopter, where it kept the enemy under surveillance. Soon the Argentine submarine Santa Fe was detected in the area. The Royal Navy flotilla was dispersed, and helicopters armed with depth charges and missiles took to the air and caught the Santa Fe on the surface. The damaged submarine limped into the harbor and sank. With the threat eliminated, the Royal Navy ships returned. Major Guy Sheridan, commander of M Company, Royal Marines, and his SAS counterpart, Major Delvis, decided to mount another helicopter assault, this time supported by the frigates HMS Antrim, Brilliant, and Plymouth. Once ashore, they quickly advanced on Grytviken. On April 25th, the Argentines surrendered. It was a small but significant victory, and the government was quick to capitalize upon it.
The commander of the operation has sent the following message. Be pleased to inform Her Majesty that the White Ensign flies alongside the Union Jack in South Georgia. God save the Queen.
What happens next, Mr. Nunn?
Thank you very much.
Just rejoice at that news and congratulate our forces and the Marines.
The reaction in Argentina was equally belligerent. Meanwhile, G Squadron SAS was flown from Britain to Ascension Island. Its task, covert reconnaissance, while D Squadron was to undertake any offensive raids.